A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I hope all of you are ready and also okay with the proceedings so far. Is everyone okay? Okay, now we have 174 invitees, or I will say participants, and right now we can see Mr. Gemma, Mr. Stefan, our moderator, and then Dr. Ali. They are all over the world, I would say, from Thailand, from Malaysia, and also Indonesia. And we also have our Chief of Statisticians for today, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzir Wahidin with us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude the seminar, we are now at the second panel discussion. I hope that everybody is ready. We are privileged here to have Mr. Stefan Priesner as our moderator from the United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia. Together with us, we have three prominent professionals in each field speaking today. I am sure it is going to be a great 2 hours of discussions and also a learning session for all of us with the topic 2030 Agenda, Bridging the Nations for a Better Global Sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce or to give a brief introduction of today's moderator. Mr. Stefan Priesner, the United Nations Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative in Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, and Uzbekistan. He gained solid experience of managing large UNDP country offices in politically sensitive, institutionally complex, and non-core resource environments, which resulted in a wealth of leadership, coordination expertise, as well as political acumen. Without further ado, I would like to call upon, my pleasure to call upon Mr. Stefan to conduct the session. The floor is yours, sir. Can you please unmute your mic, Mr. Stefan?
So, second try. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me now. It's a pleasure to be the moderator of this session. Thank you, MC, for the very kind introduction. Let me start by congratulating the Department of Statistics Malaysia on today's latest publication on SDG indicators. And I'd like to especially greet the chief statistician that I see being with us, Dr. Muhammad Uzir. I think I had a chance it was of course presented in Malay. So my Malay, despite having been now 3.5 years in your beautiful country, is not good enough. But I did look afterwards at the printouts and I thought it was a very impressive presentation. So congratulations, Dr. Uzir. I was impressed both in terms of the breadth of coverage of the SDG indicators and also the quality of sources. Clearly much progress has been made and Malaysia is well ahead, but of course there is still quite a while to go that we have a comprehensive data set to measure the progress of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the year 2020 was supposed to be a milestone year, 5 years of the Sustainable Development Goals, progress, and I'm sure we will hear this later on, globally was too slow. And at the beginning of this year, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, had launched, therefore, a decade of action to really kind of mobilize the world community to focus its effort in an even more coordinated fashion to achieve the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. But of course, then COVID-19 struck, and we all know the devastating impact it had. And it is important to remember that the pandemic is not only a health crisis, but also, as you all know, a very severe socioeconomic crisis with negative impacts on most, if not all, of the SDGs. And I hope we will hear about this also in this session. And I think in the presentation made earlier today, there have also been some data presented that testifies to the fact that also Malaysia Malaysian progress against the SDGs was indeed affected. Now, dear friends, the first SDG indicators publication was in 2018, and from that one we know that Malaysia has a good standing in the region in relation to data availability. We also know from UN ESCAP data that we have made progress in terms of several of the indicators, and I believe even this year there was another kind of step of progress made, moving from 107 to 115 SDG indicators that are now, I think, supported by data sets. And I think this is commendable because we know that the data ecosystem is quite challenging in the SDG era. But on the other hand, we also know how important basically data are. I mean, I think it's very clear that one of the defining features of the Sustainable Development Goals is that it's based on evidence, based on very solid data sets. We have never had such an availability of data before, and I think the SDGs have done a brilliant job in really kind of selecting on the basis of a very consultative process these very kind of complex data sets. From the time of the Millennium Development Goals, we know that as soon as there are internationally agreed data there, then things tend to get done. What gets measured gets done. And I think we really have learned from that. And the era of the SDGs kind of, I think, measures progress, or is able to measure progress in an even much more precise manner. Now, let me say a few words on the collaboration of the United Nations with the Department of Statistics Malaysia. I think it is fair to say that we have an excellent collaboration. About 1.5 years ago, we completed the first phase of the SDG progress monitoring system, and the UN country team is also very eager to further support the Department of Statistics in enhancing the SDG monitoring and evaluation ecosystem in the coming years through technical support, capacity building in addressing certain remaining data gaps. So, Dr. User, we are very much looking forward to strengthen our collaboration in early 2021. I would also like to say a few words on the significance of the report that you presented today. It is very timely because, as we all know, the second voluntary national review will be presented in New York or virtually, depending on what is possible, to the high-level political forum in July 2021. This is the second report. The first one was presented in 2017. We had the pleasure to collaborate at that time with the Economic Planning Unit and the Department of Statistics to kind of prepare this report, and we will do so again in early 2021. I think it's a heavy kind of task, but fascinating task ahead of us, because I think we need to be ready by about April next year. Now, an open and inclusive process is always very important as we take stock of the SDG progress, especially if we are to ensure a whole-of-nation approach for the SDGs. I think we also know that the SDGs are such an ambitious vision that they cannot be achieved only by government action, but the idea is also to mobilize key actors in the society, including private sector, including NGOs, but also the general public, to pull together to make as solid a progress as possible. And we had the pleasure also to collaborate with several national partners in our SDG Summit last year, more or less exactly a year ago that took place. So all of these set of activities, I think, testify to a very, very close collaboration. I therefore believe that the topic which has been carefully chosen for this panel, which is bridging the nations for a better global sustainability is very appropriate and brings with it the spirit of global partnership for development, by itself SDG 17, which of course is an imperative for the sustainable development goals to be materialized. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia has, and I assume this was the subject of the first session this today, or second session, has embedded the SDGs in its national plans and vision, including the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030, and most recently the national budget. And we are expecting the publication very soon of the 12th Malaysia Plan, that we believe is also will be very closely aligned with the SDGs. But in addition, we also have a collaboration on what we call an SDG roadmap. So this roadmap will be kind of drafted in also 2021 to look further at a gap analysis with regard to the different goals, and we look forward to the collaboration on this very important endeavor. What we do hope to see in this roadmap, and I'm taking the opportunity to kind of mention this, is the setting of Malaysia-specific targets. Because, of course, we have the global targets, but I think in many ways Malaysia can even be a bit more ambitious for its national targets, given that you have such an excellent record of development. And so I think an essential part of this SDG roadmap would be the setting of Malaysia-specific targets, so that you can afterwards measure the progress. And together with setting targets and measuring targets, there is also an importance to come up with a clear SDG financing strategy, because, as I said, action will not come only from government, and similarly financing will not only from government. To really achieve the SDGs, we also need to mobilize other partners, such as the private sector, to come in to basically help finance this very ambitious framework. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me introduce you to the very illustrious lineup of our panelists. And we have 3 panelists reflecting the global, the regional, and the country perspective. The first one is my colleague from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Ms. Alessandra Alfieri, who is the chief of the Environmental Economic Accounts section of the Economic Statistics branch in the Statistics Division. Ms. Alfieri is responsible for the Environmental Economic Accounting Program at the United Nations Statistics Division. And she has led work on the development of the systems of environmental economic accounting, including the valuation of ecosystem services. This is a highly innovative framework for reflecting the costs of environmental impacts within national income accounts. And we look forward to hearing her presentation in a moment. Ms. Alfieri holds a PhD in statistics, has served with Eurostat and the World Bank in the past. Then after Ms. Alfieri, we will have the pleasure to listen to Ms. Gemma Van Halderen, who is the Director of Statistics Division in the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP. Welcome, Gemma. Prior to joining ESCAP in June 2018, Ms. Van Halderen was a member of the Australian Bureau of Statistics executive team, leading the transformation of the Bureau's statistical programs and implementation of modernized statistical capabilities. And last but not least, we will have with us Mr. Ali Said, who is the Director of Analysis and Development of Statistics in Indonesia. Mr. Said conducts analysis of social and economic issues and works on the development of statistical indicators, and very important, is one of the SDG focal points in Indonesia's National Statistical Office. He is principally responsible for SDG indicators, but other areas under his responsibility include the quality assurance framework for statistical activities, implementing especially the small area estimations for variables such as poverty, and the development of big data uses to support official statistics. So I think we are really kind of very pleased to have such a well qualified set of speakers. And let us now listen first to Miss Alessandra Alfieri. Alessandra, the floor is yours, please.
Hello everyone, and first of all I would like to thank the organizer for the opportunity to participate in this panel. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person, but this is actually the middle of the night for me in New York. Nevertheless, I hope that to provide some insights and to contribute to the discussion. The past few months have been difficult for all of us. COVID-19 has had a profound impact on our health, on the economy, and well-being in general. In this backdrop, the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs are more prominent than ever. Countries that are coping best with the pandemic are those countries that have embraced the SDGs. Now, actually, a lot of countries are starting to think of the recovery and what is the best path to take for the recovery. The Secretary General has given a clear message that we should move away from returning to the status quo and the old paradigm of increasing economic growth. The message has been to build back better. So this is not only a slogan, but it is really a way or an opportunity to start thinking on how to allocate possible stimulus packages or financial resources that may become available in the aftermath of the pandemic to move towards a more inclusive growth that takes into account not only the economy, but also society and environmental consideration. Climate change and biodiversity losses are the big challenges that the world is facing and will be facing in the medium to long term. But the time to act is now. If we wait too long, then we will reach a point of no return. From every crisis, there are opportunities, and we should look at this time as an opportunity to transform the way we are taking decisions and the path we are choosing for the future. The 2030 Agenda provides exactly the vision to do so. From a statistical perspective, the SDG indicators provide the necessary monitoring framework to support the 2030 Agenda and support integrated policies and decision-making. The indicators framework, which was adopted by the Statistical Commission, encompasses 231 indicators. Of these indicators, 93 are environment related. This is from a study that comes from UNEP, and that also shows that the data on these indicators is actually the poorest. So either the data is not available or it is of poor quality. This is partly due to the fact that the national statistical offices have prioritized developing information systems on the economy, on society, and on population. And the environmental data have often been the responsibility of line ministries that have compiled this type of data more primarily for their own purposes to manage natural resources, for example, water, forest, energy, and so on. Some of the environmental data have been compiled by the NGOs, but there has been very little systematization and inclusion of the statistics as part of official statistical program. The situation is now changing quickly, so there is a transformation going on because there is a recognition that the environment is something that needs to be managed and conserved. And this is it is primarily because there is a recognition that the environment provides benefit to the economy and to people and to our own well-being. So this has also translated into a demand for integrated information on the environment and its relationship with the economy and to people. It is an acknowledgement that the environment provides benefits which need to be measured and need to be made visible. The system of national accounts, which is the system for measuring the economy, and focuses especially on indicators such as GDP, employment, produced capital, financial capital, has not really taken into account the impact of economic activities on the environment. For example, depletion of natural resources, degradation of the environment, or the contribution of natural capital to economic growth and well-being. So the need to take the environment into account as an important factor in the decision-making process has led the statistical community to develop an internationally agreed framework to measure the environment and its contribution to the economy, the system of environmental economic accounts. And more recently, substantial work has also taken place to develop a system, an SEEA, and ecosystem accounts, which actually measure the extent, the condition, and the contribution of ecosystem services to the economy and well-being. Actually, the Statistical Commission will consider its adoption as a statistical standard at its next meeting. National statistical offices have had an important role to play and will have increasingly an important role to play as data steward. The compilation of this type of accounts that are basically at the interface between the environment and the economy require expertise from different disciplines. So there is a need for national statistical offices to play the role as a data steward and bringing together these different expertise from different sources to develop trusted data that can support policies. I mentioned before that that from period of crisis there are also opportunities, and here if I can draw a parallel, the system of national accounts came out actually and in the aftermath of the World War II to monitor the state of the economy and the recovery. At this stage, and the aftermath, let's say, of the pandemic, the system of environmental economic accounting, and in particular the ecosystem accounting approach, can be seen as the necessary framework to measure the contribution of the environment and the ecosystem to the economy and to our well-being in order to ensure its management and conservation and to address the issue of climate change and biodiversity loss. Without conserving our ecosystems and biodiversity and our planet against climate change, we will not be able to achieve the 2030 agenda. Actually, 2020 was supposed to be what was called the super year for nature, with a number of events at the global level taking place to make sure to put nature on the global agenda and consequently also on the national agenda. Now, let's hope that the 2021 will be the super year for nature. There are a number of global events that will address, for example, biodiversity. There will be a COP15, a Conference of Parties on biodiversity, which will take place in Kunming, China, and they will develop a post-2020 biodiversity, global biodiversity framework, and an associated monitoring framework. So here again, the need for developing data and information is very much at the top of the agenda. The national statistical community has been invited to participate in this process and to contribute to the development and the implementation of the monitoring framework. There will be also a COP16 on climate change, which I think will be will address the issues of, for example, decarbonization. The Secretary General has announced that by 2050 he would like a complete a zero carbon world. There will be also a UN global conference on oceans, and actually the Ocean Panel just released their report this last week, and has identified ocean accounts as one of the priority of the 5 top priorities. So this means that the need for information, again, and using an accounting approach that takes into account the economic, the social, and the environmental aspects is very much high on the agenda. There will be also an IUCN World Congress. Here it should be noted that a motion was adopted by the IUCN World Congress with 800 members approval, which actually called for the scientific community, and in particular the IUCN, to work with national statistical offices to develop information for biodiversity. So again, the role of statistical offices in this space is very much called for. The Secretary General has also called the 2020 to 2030 as the decade for ecosystem restoration, and also the decade for oceans. So there are a lot of these initiatives which are quite important to put the environment at the heart of the Sustainable Development Agenda. And the national statistical offices have an important role to play in the implementation of the 2030 agenda, and in particular in strengthening the environmental pillar. In conclusion, I think that there is renewed awareness, and there is urgency to develop integrated policy that take into account a holistic approach, where the environment actually has a very important central place, and I strongly believe that this will also result in a renewed commitment to the 2030 agenda. Thank you very much, and
Thank you, Alessandra Alfieri, and greetings to New York, and thank you for this concise kind of update, this case, why it is important to include environmental indicators and environmental economic accounts into the normal, national accounts. We all know that the urgency of restoration of ecosystem is a global issue, is a global priority, and I think Ms. Alfieri also pointed out that COVID-19, with all its catastrophic impact, is also seen as an opportunity to get it right in times of recovery. So building back better needs to take into account the ecological aspect in a much more robust way, and the role of national statistical offices to provide the data sets to really have a much better analytical grasp of issues was also very aptly pointed out. Now let's move to the second speaker, Gemma Van Halderen. Welcome once again, and the floor is yours, please.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you very much, everybody, for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'd like to say a very warm welcome, a very warm hello to Dr. Mahadin, all our friends at the Department of Statistics Malaysia, yourself, Stephen, and all of the audience that are with us today. A very warm Selamat Datang from Thailand, or I should say Sawadika. It is really a great honour to be with you at this webinar and to join, present to you today a regional perspective on
I think we may have some connection problems. Gemma, can you hear us? Because you have frozen. We can't unfortunately hear you. Gemma, I'm now asking the organizers whether we should move to maybe to the next presenter, or whether we should give it a try to get back Miss Gemma. Okay. MC, would you? Okay, now we have, I think Gemma is coming back. Hello, Gemma. We have lost you, but you're back now.
Yeah, my sincere apologies. Let me start again, and my apologies for that. I'm glad that I made it back in.
Wonderful.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So first of all, I'll just go back again and say a very warm welcome to Dr. Urzia, all my friends there at Department of Statistics, yourself, Stephen, and a very warm Selamat Datang this afternoon. Awareness and commitment over the globe to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in my view, is very strong. It is a country-led development agenda that was endorsed by all members of the United Nations in 2015, as we know. But the importance of this endorsement is it's got political support from 193 countries, the support of world leaders, including your very own Prime Minister there in Malaysia. And this political commitment makes it extremely important and essential, really, that awareness of the agenda is strong and commitment to it is strong. Now, one indicator of the commitment, the global commitment we've seen to the agenda, are voluntary national reviews. And these voluntary national reviews are led by countries on a voluntary basis to report on national progress, your progress towards achievement of the agenda. And they're presented annually at a high-level political forum hosted by the UN in July. The number of the voluntary national reviews presented each year has been steadily growing. In 2016, the first year after the agenda was adopted, there were 22 countries who presented their voluntary national review. The next year, in 2016, the number grew to 43, and 2017 was the year when Malaysia put forward their first voluntary national review. In 2018, the number grew again to 46, and in both 2019 and this year, 2020, the number of countries who presented their voluntary national review was 47. So despite the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, 47 countries still presented their voluntary national review in July this year. Next year, in 2021, we're seeing 44 countries present their voluntary national review. Malaysia will be presenting its second, and 8 countries, including our friends there in Indonesia, will be presenting their third voluntary national review. We're also seeing, for the very first time in 2021, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea will be presenting their voluntary national review. Now, to me, these political indicators of both awareness and commitment to the agenda are extremely important, and they're also really valuable for us as the statistical community to see that our work as statisticians contributes at the policy and at the political level, nationally, regionally, and globally. So my second area I just wanted to touch on was the statistical awareness and commitment to the 2030 agenda. As the statistical community, we came together with a very important task to establish the global SDG indicator framework. And Malaysia was a part of this very important task. It's the global SDG indicator framework that is guiding our politicians and our policymakers, as well as our national statistical systems, on what evidence is needed, what data is needed, and what disaggregations are needed. And today, the launch of the 2019 Malaysia Sdg Indicator report is a commitment to this global framework and to localising this global framework for Malaysia. And it's a real commitment for which you should be applauded. It recognises the awareness and the commitment of the Department of Statistics Malaysia to the 2030 agenda, to supporting the statistical and data needs of the agenda, and for monitoring Malaysia's progress. I very much look forward to reading the 2000 report, and I'll have to no doubt get somebody to help me with translating from Malay into English. I also want to mention here some other indicators of the awareness and commitment to the agenda from across the globe. In our own region, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is guiding our efforts to advance official statistics. The agenda is identifying priorities for our ESCAP Committee on Statistics, which Dr. Gemma Van Halderen chaired from 2018 to 2020. The agenda is also guiding the Regional Steering Group on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics, which is also co-chaired by Ms. Nazaria Baharudin from the Department of Statistics Malaysia. And the agenda is guiding a regional steering group on improving economic statistics that's co-chaired by Mr. Muhammad Yazid Kazim. So these are just 3 examples where the leadership of senior statisticians from the Department of Statistics Malaysia are advancing official statistics in Asia and the Pacific in support of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our youth and our young statisticians are also very aware and committed to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And this year, at the 2020 Asia Pacific Statistics Week, over 900 participants participated in the event, which was entirely virtual due to COVID-19. But still we were able to bring together the very strong statistical community in Asia and the Pacific to share their experiences and share their expertise. And many countries, including Malaysia, were very well represented at this Pacific Week and led many sessions and contributed actively to all of the discussions. The event this year also introduced a new innovation, the selection of papers to be progressed to submission to an international journal. And this was a very competitive process, and we received 400 abstracts for the Asia Pacific Week, and only 13 out of 400 were selected for submission. And I'm very, very pleased to say that 2 papers from Malaysia were selected and just 2 weeks ago released in the December edition of the Statistical Journal of the International Association of Official Statistics. And here I would like to congratulate all the authors from the Department of Statistics Malaysia for sharing their work around measures of gig workers using the labour force survey and e-survey data collection mechanisms for short-term economic surveys. Ladies and gentlemen, the International Association of Official Statistics, which I've just mentioned, is also very aware of the 2030 Agenda and is committed to its ambitions, as is its parent body, International Stats Institute. Both Dr. Özyer and myself are part of the executive committee of the association, and we partner in ensuring that the 2030 Agenda guides the statistical profession. And here I would like to again praise and recognise the significant contribution the Department of Statistics Malaysia made to host the 2019 World Statistics Congress. Many of the streams of discussions at the Congress in 2019 were about the SDGs, or were about the 2030 Agenda. This Congress brought together thousands of people to discuss pressing statistical issues and innovations. And innovation was a key component of not only the discussions, but the wonderful organisation and the wonderful hosting by the Department of Statistics Malaysia and the partners that you brought together for the event. So in summary, I've shared with you today, from my perspective, multiple indicators of why I believe awareness and commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development nationally, regionally and globally is strong. We've got indicators from our political leaders, from our statistical community, from professional associations. And it's a really great pleasure to work with you and to see the leadership that comes from Dr. Özyer and the entire team at the Department of Statistics Malaysia to keep the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development on the radar. So today's webinar and the launch of the 2019 Indicators Report build on this active contribution, and the innovation that we see is provided nationally, regionally and globally. Thank you very much for your listening. Back to you. Thank you, Stephen.
Gemma, thank you very much for this very kind of clear presentation of the great level of awareness and commitment and the importance of statistical offices actually to guide politicians. I found this a very important messages also here. Let us now, without further ado, move to Dr. Ali Said. Dr. Ali, my question to trigger your presentation is perhaps from the National Statistical Agency point of view, how do you find the awareness and commitment across government agencies as well as the private sector to the 2030 Agenda? Dr. Ali, over to you. We are all ears.
Thank you, Stefan. Selamat petang for all audience. It's great great honor for me to be with you all. And first of all, I have to say thank you for Department of Statistics Malaysia for inviting BPS to be one of panelists in this webinar. The Honorable Dr. Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin, and all audience in this webinar. Today, in this first session, I would like to present about the issue on the commitment and awareness of government agencies and private sectors in the implementation of SDGs in Indonesia. And before I presenting my presentation, I would like to share first my file. I hope I can see. Wait. I'm not sure I can. Wait. Should I send to? Okay. Actually, yesterday I joined the dry run session actually. Oh, sorry.
Dr. Ali,
Yeah,
you can still hear us, huh? Yeah, yeah.
I would like to try to share my PowerPoint, but
Yes.
I couldn't. Just wait a minute.
Sure.
Oh. I'm really sorry I couldn't share the PowerPoint, but I'll try to present what I've been written. Okay, I'm really sorry for this inconvenience. First of all, about the commitment of all stakeholders in any program should be built from the early stage of the program preparation. In the implementation of SDGs Indonesia, all actors were involved intensively, especially in preparing a number of documents for SDGs implementation. The identification of data availability for SDGs, for example, which started in the early 2015, all government agencies at central level and also a number of non-government organizations, including academia and also NGOs, were invited in a series of meetings. And in 2017, the final draft of SDG indicator covering SDG global indicators and proxy indicators with the total of 319 indicators were agreed by all stakeholders in Indonesia. And in this regard, BPS contributed about 40% of the total indicators. In preparing SDG indicator metadata, National Planning Agency and BPS conducted a series of meetings by inviting all line ministries where data for certain indicators were identified to be available or possible to be collected. During the process of the identification of data availability for measuring SDGs, academia and international organizations all invited to give inputs and comments. And then to strengthen the implementation of SDGs, the presidential decree on SDGs was formally enacted. This presidential decree is a form of political commitment of the government to implement SDGs in Indonesia. In this decree, the involvement of all actors, including government, civil society organization, academia, philanthropy, business, parliament are clearly stated. And this presidential decree is formally enacted to give a clear insight of the SDGs implementation framework in Indonesia. It's about the definition and target of SDGs, cover role of minister and institution, and then about the procedures and the coordination, about the involvement of stakeholders, and then also about the mechanism of evaluation and reporting, as well as the budget and all goals and target of SDGs also covered in this presidential decree. And then this presidential decree on SDGs is also used as a legal basis to integrate SDGs into the national development plan. Then as mandated in the presidential decree, besides metadata, other documents must be produced including SDGs roadmap, and then SDGs national action plan, technical guideline for setting SDGs action plan, and also SDGs monitoring and evaluation. A high commitment and awareness of all SDGs actors, including government agencies, academia, civil society, organization, philanthropy, and NGO, was clarified in the preparation of SDGs National Action Plan document. During this process, both government agencies and non-government agencies propose their programs and activities relevant to certain SDGs goals and targets to be achieved during mid-term and long-term implementation following the national development program. This national action plan actually consists of SDGs goals and target, as well as indicators and program and activities to achieve the targets, covering all program and activities conducted by government and also program and activities conducted by non-government organizations. In finalizing the National Action Plan, a public consultation was conducted both through offline meeting and also online basis. And then at the implementation level, about the government commitment, during a few years after the implementation, exactly about 3 years after the presidential decree on SDGs was enacted as the basis of SDGs implementation, the commitment of government agencies at both central and local level, as well as other stakeholders, have been very high. As part of the commitment in implementing SDGs, every government institution has implemented programs and activities to achieve this target, then have been integrated with its annual activity plans. In order to run SDGs program smoothly, Ministry of Planning, our National Planning Agency, plays a coordinating role for the integration of SDGs program run by all government agencies. The commitment of local government in implementing SDGs, most local government have already prepared regional action plan for SDGs. And by September 2020 this year, there were 27 out of 34 provincial governments that have already prepared regional action plan for SDGs. How about the commitment of and awareness of non-government institutions? In the National Action Plan 2017 to 2019, there were 108 non-government organizations putting their work plan on SDGs in all areas: social, economic, environment, and also governance. In general, there have been a high commitment of non-government institutions, including business, civil society, or community organization, NGO, and others, in SDGs implementation in Indonesia. The role of private sector in the implementation of SDGs have been mainly in their support for financing SDGs. The commitment and awareness of number of business community have been very high, although the number of business community involved in the SDGs implementation may be still limited, but their awareness are growing, and we are expecting more business to be involved in SDGs implementation in the future. The private sector, especially, already said that they have a role on SDG financing. In Indonesia, the business and philanthropy consisting of 15 associations already established Indonesia Business and Communication Forum for SDGs to support the SDGs financing. And the mechanism of the business in their involvement in SDGs, especially through the corporate social responsibility. Several big companies have already mainstream SDGs in their activities. For example, Astra company, is a big company in Indonesia, is committed to develop renewable energy, and also other company, for example, in Province Rio, they already mainstream goal 12, 13, 14 of the SDGs into their program activities. In Indonesia, academia or university also played a significant role in the SDGs implementation. University as a center of excellence for SDGs, conducting research and produce policy papers. University also develop a curriculum of SDGs as part of their education program, and I think in the long term, this will be a very significant impact on the SDGs implementation, as more people maybe become more, aware of SDGs. And currently, there are 19 university SDG center across regional level, and this SDG center have functioned as a central government partner at regional level, and also they have a duty to monitor and evaluate SDG implementation at regional level, help local government in preparing regional action plan on SDGs, and also help translating SDGs into local government policy. And I think this is what I can answer about the commitment and awareness of both government and private sectors in Indonesia, especially in the implementation of SDGs. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience of because I couldn't share the file presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. And we all know about the risks sometimes of trying to present online a PowerPoint presentation. I think it happened to all of us that for some reason something didn't work. So we fully understand that. I think you very well articulated, even without PowerPoint presentation, the very strong commitment and awareness of SDGs, in Indonesia, down from the highest level. You mentioned the presidential decree on SDGs, to the very high awareness of public institutions, down to local level where there are local plans, and also growing awareness and commitment in the private sector. So I think this was very nicely kind of pointed out. I can read that Indonesia really tries to establish an all-of-nation or all-of-society approach to achieve the SDGs, and I think you pointed out all the elements here. Now, I'd like to come to a second round of questions, if I may. And that second round of questions will be focused on climate action, among others. I want to mention that a few days ago, the Secretary General of the United Nations pointed out that 2021 for him will have as a first priority climate change, or climate action rather, and to bring especially also the private sector on board for climate action, because progress is too slow and has been set back, during the COVID crisis. As we all know, the climate action has been underlined as one of the 17 life-changing goals. So the question is, how do you assess the commitment from countries to achieving the climate change agenda? From your experiences, can you suggest and share some practices, tools, policies to be implemented in delivering this agenda? And beginning again with Ms. Gemma, from your point of view, Gemma, what are the challenges faced by the countries in committing to the agenda, and how might this be overcome? Over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephen. I hope I'm able to do this real challenge justice. So I just want to cover three challenges that are faced by countries in committing to the agenda, and I'll try and weave in the climate action aspect here. So today, as we've heard, is the launch of the 2019 Malaysian Sdg Indicators report. And like Malaysia, my own institution, the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, we also prepare and launch an SDG report. And we're currently preparing our fourth report, which we launched in March next year. And one of the key findings that we make every year is the following: data availability across the region is weak. We're in our 5th year of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next year, we're about to start our 6th year, and still less than half of the globally agreed SDG indicators have sufficient data to measure progress. We have seen some improvements from around 27% in 2016 to 42% in 2020, but this still is less than 50%. And as we heard from Alessandra Alfieri from UNDES's Statistics Division, the environmental indicators is where data availability is particularly poor. And for Goal 13, which is climate action, this is also the case. So how, and I'm just saying again what Stephen in his introductory said, how can we measure progress if we do not have sufficient data? And how can governments, how can our political leaders know whether they are on track to meet their commitments under the agenda if there is no data? And to me, this is one of many challenges, and a big challenge faced by countries in committing to the agenda. Now, back in 2015, our political leaders committed to a global SDG indicator framework, which was simple yet robust. And I've just been reading the 2030 agenda again this week, and the countries committed to a simple but robust framework. But they committed to a framework that measures 17 goals and 169 targets. So it's a framework with a minimum of 169 indicators if we produce one per target. And actually, the statistical community agreed to a framework of 231 indicators, because many targets have multiple dimensions. So compiling data for 231 indicators is a challenge for any country, let alone developing countries, and let alone for small island states like we have here in Asia and the Pacific. Now, pleasingly, the statistical community is extremely ready for this challenge. We're seeing innovations everywhere to address the challenges. We're seeing the use of non-traditional data sources like Earth observations and mobile phone data. We're seeing a commitment to strengthening civil registration and vital statistics systems, which can provide data for over 50 of these 231 indicators. And we're seeing countries like Malaysia embracing new methodologies like data integration to address the challenges. So we've had our political masters ask for a simple yet robust framework. The statistical community has developed this simple framework of 231 indicators, and we are rising to the challenge, but we're not rising to it fast enough because we're still seeing in our region insufficient data to measure over 50% of the agreed indicators. ESCAP is currently preparing an analysis of where do big data sources like mobile phone data, where can big data sources be used to fill some of these data gaps? Now, our research is showing there is little evidence of countries actually using big data sources for the SDG indicators. We've found evidence of countries using big data for official statistics like CPI, like for mobility statistics, like tourism statistics, but not for the SDG indicators. So to me, this points to a second challenge that I think countries are facing. And that second challenge is confidence. Confidence to use the big data sources for the official SDG indicators. And I'm going to hypothesize here that because the official SDG indicators are providing evidence for our politicians and our policymakers who have to report to a global high-level political forum on how well the countries are delivering on their commitments to the agenda. Therefore, our politicians are standing, our prime ministers are standing at the high-level forum presenting the evidence that comes from the official statistics system, and they therefore need very high-quality, trusted statistics. And this added scrutiny, I think, is essential, but it's also an opportunity. And I do see this opportunity for national statistical systems and leaders like you have there in Malaysia and the Department of Statistics Malaysia to try and use these non-traditional sources for your SDG indicators. And the Voluntary National Review in 2021 is an opportunity for Malaysia to step up, for the Department of Statistics Malaysia to step up and embrace these non-traditional data sources to address the data availability challenges that I know we have regionally and that I know you have there in Malaysia. To put forward, to be confident, to put forward your innovations, your expertise, your modern approaches, so that your leaders can recognise your innovation, your creativity. So this to me is a second challenge that I'm throwing out to you there, Dr. Urzia and the DOSM team. I think you can rise to this challenge. I'm very confident. And so this brings me to my third challenge. And to me, the third challenge is communication. The 2030 agenda is a big agenda. The Millennium Development Goals was 8 goals, and it was only developing nations. We've gone from 8 goals to 17. We've gone from something like 20 odd indicators to 231 indicators. How does a country like Malaysia, or like where I am in Thailand, or my home country like Australia, how does a country succinctly report on 231 indicators, 169 targets, and 17 goals? Now, ESCAP's been working on this communication challenge by developing 2 measures to assess progress. The first measure is what we call Current Status Index, and it basically measures where are we now. In 2020, where are we now? The second measure is what's called an anticipated progress index. And what it does is it forecasts or it predicts out to 2030, where are we likely to be? And so one is like a stock measure of here and now, one is like a flow measure of where are we likely to be. And by using these two measures, we can really improve communication, because the measures put together some dashboards and graphics of all of the goals and all of the targets. And these measures, these two approaches, are available to you, to all countries, and a toolkit will be shortly released where countries like Malaysia can apply the methodology using your own data, with your own indicators, with your own targets to assess progress. And we heard from Mr. President earlier about setting Malaysia's own targets for your SDGs, which you've localised in the Malaysian SDG roadmap. So there is an opportunity, and we would be very happy to work with you to support you in the communication of this very, very big 2030 agenda. Now, I know that Malaysia is up to this, because Malaysia is very good at communication avenues. You use a lot of communication tools. You've embraced them: infographics, social media, data portals, videos, music. You've really embraced music. Statistics Bloom in Harmony is an excellent song. You use press releases, you use media events, and you use launches like today's launch of the Indicator report. And these are all focused on getting your messages across in an appealing way. So I know that you really do focus on this challenge that many countries face in our region of communication, and we're very happy to keep working with you. Now, one of the particular innovations, communication, which I really wanted to just share with you yet again, and you've heard me talk about this so positively before, is that the 29 World Statistics Congress Statistics Run. And many of us joined you there early in the morning. I think it was like 5 a.m. in the morning there in Kuala Lumpur, and to join you in the stats run. And I was particularly impressed that every kilometre or so, you had a little sign on the side of the road giving us a very key fact about Malaysia, like how many people are living in Malaysia, what's your GDP, and so on. And this really kept me motivated, not just to keep running, or I was probably walking, not running, but it really kept you inspired to keep going. So these little snippets of information that come out of reports like your SDG report, and that you use social media for, and you use things like the stats run for, really are very inspiring. So in conclusion, Stephen, I'd like to just highlight again that I shared three challenges: data availability, a degree of conservatism, and communication. And these are particularly evident in the environmental goals, as we've heard from Alessandra. And if I narrow down to goal 13 and climate action, these are particularly difficult as well, because countries have to just, countries have very differing views on climate action and on climate change and on the various agreements in place for this. So data availability for climate and climate-related issues is a challenge. Can be a degree of conservatism around that, and communicating what is happening in the area of climate, and ensuring that agencies like the Department of Statistics are communicating in line with the government messaging is very important. But I've also shared how I think these challenges can be overcome. And I'd really like, again, to stress that I see Malaysia overcomes these challenges through very, very innovative leadership time and time again. And it's a real pleasure to be able to be with you today to recognise this, because I often bring in examples from Malaysia when I'm talking elsewhere in the region. ESCAP and my institution and the Statistics Division and CIAP, the Statistical Institute for Asia Pacific, we really are very committed to working with you and the regional community to face these challenges together, because I think together we can overcome them and we can ensure that our countries, our citizens, our political leaders have the evidence and the tools available to them to meet the commitments of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thank you very much, Stephen. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for this very, very clear kind of presentation of three top challenges, but also the ability of Malaysia to overcome those quite easily. I'm so happy that you mentioned the statistics run, because I was also participating last year, and I also still remember the signposts. And also you mentioned social media. I'm also always happy to receive directly from Dato Sri Uzir the Friday statistical compilation by Twitter or by other social media. So this is, I think, very, very innovative, and I think in that spirit, absolutely, we have no doubts that the data sets can be developed and then also communicated in the right manner. So thank you very much for that. I'm moving over to the second round of questions to Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali, how are public institutions in your country engaging and involving citizens in achieving the SDGs? And again, let's look at it from a challenge point of view and potentially also from a experience/solution point of view, what you have found in your experience. Over to you, please. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to give some insight from Indonesia, especially in involving citizens in the SDGs implementation. And during the implementation of SDGs, Indonesia government has already established a partnership with all stakeholders, and also promoted the community involvement in the implementation. The mechanism of this of the involvement of citizens actually mostly from the civil society organization or community organization, especially where, to encourage the organization to promote SDGs to their members. And in Indonesia, I think already, maybe you know that there are two very big community organizations. There is Nahdlatul Ulama or NU, and also Muhammadiyah organization. These two organizations have already played an important role in implementing SDGs in Indonesia. I come first from I come to the NU first, Nahdlatul Ulama organization first. That's the NU already committed to address the problem of the country with respect to SDGs. That there are some programs that have already developed to support the welfare and the goodness of the society. For example, in NU organization, there is
Dr. Ali, you're a little bit difficult to understand. Can you go a little closer to the microphone? It's a bit difficult to understand you.
Yeah, sometimes the connection is unstable. Sorry. Can you hear?
Yes, better, much better.
Yeah. First, the NU organization, Nahdlatul Ulama organization in Indonesia, established the maritime Nahdlatul Ulama Maritime Board, which committed to address the maritime for the welfare of the society. And a number of seminars, for example, is conducted by the NU, Nahdlatul Ulama organization, in a number of occasions to socialize or to educating people and to understand people in what is SDGs and what should what can they involve in. And also this organization as there's Muhammadiyah organization. Muhammadiyah organization already also plays a significant role in SDGs implementation in Indonesia. For example, in zakah or charity board under the Muhammadiyah organization, they already put some programs in the that zakah or charity can be used to help the government in SDG in achieving some SDGs targets. For example, in the goals of poverty, education, health, gender equity, inequality, and also ocean ecosystem. And women organization under the Muhammadiyah organization in several regions are also involved in accelerating the SDGs achievement by establishing a working group on SDGs. And I think this is also important program for the Muhammadiyah organization in helping government to achieve SDGs. And other program that's conducted by Muhammadiyah is all about conduct seminar on digitalization, for example, for digitalization of philanthropy, for strengthening government of Lasis or zakah board of Muhammadiyah in achieving SDGs. Another mechanism is from the local government, especially to how to promote local people in achieving SDGs. For example, in district of Jambi, one district of Jambi province, how they create awareness of people on the environment. One innovation that has been made there is where people pay property tax with garbage or rubbish. What does it mean? That in this program, households are asked to select and classify rubbish in several categories. Which one is for recycling and which one is for producing or fertilizer production, and etc. And this program is initiated by local tax office actually in Jambi. And this is one of the contribution of local people in creating clean environment. And actually, there are some other involvement of the local people in it, but maybe I try to move next about the challenges. The challenges in involving local or public in the SDG implementation is first about the population. Implementing SDGs in a country with a huge population of around 270 million is not easy task, while among adult population who finish senior high school or higher level in Indonesia was just below 40%. This means that more than 50% of adult population still have a very low level of education. And to some extent, this can affect the way they accept the SDGs concept of development. The second, Indonesia is a very diverse nation with many ethnics and cultures. And this poses a challenge on how to implement SDGs that fit with the local context. And can be easily accepted by local people. So there is no one formula fit for all. The third is about the geographic condition of Indonesia with a huge number of islands and also a challenge in the implementation of SDGs. And then the next, government is also facing limited resources in implementing SDGs in terms both of budget and human resources, especially when we talk about implementing SDGs at district level. We have 514 autonomous district level. So the implementation of SDGs basically run by local government at district level. And then when we the last one, when we are addressing inequality aspect in SDGs, this equality in many aspects such as inequality in access to infrastructure, education facilities, health facilities, and other might hinder the SDGs implementation in Indonesia, especially when we talk about the differences in between the western part of Indonesia and the eastern part of Indonesia. I think that's a part of the challenge in the SDGs implementation in Indonesia when we talk about how to involving people or public in the SDGs implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, for kind of pointing out these challenges, nevertheless, the kind of wide range of stakeholders that are already engaged at ground level in implementing and also raising awareness about the SDGs. I would like to kind of now that we have had 2 rounds of presentations based on questions, perhaps come to the question and answer session, and would like to open the floor to the audience for questions. Please indicate who would like to ask a question to our resource people. I don't know, I don't see a hand up. You can either put a hand up or you can also kind of take the floor. Is there any question from the audience? It has been a quite long day, but and of course the presentations were also very comprehensive. I would like to actually ask a question to the 2 distinguished resource persons. If I understood correctly, Ali, Dr. Ali, in Indonesia you have already national targets and an indicator set that is going beyond the let's say internationally agreed indicator set. Have I correctly understood that you have something like 319 indicators? It may have not come correctly through, but I wanted to ask you maybe to say a little bit more about this national target setting and how it complements the international set of data, and then maybe afterwards, Gemma, if I may ask you to complement from the ESCAP point of view.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Yes, that's right. That's in the first round of the implementation, actually between 2015 to 2020, we use 319 indicators. Actually, this total indicators covered about 85 global indicators and also other additional indicator or proxy indicators. Because from the about 240 indicators around that one of the global, not all the indicators are available in our country. So some of the indicators that not globally available, in the global indicator that not available in Indonesia, we use proxy indicators. So one global indicators can be proxied with several indicators. So for example, goals of education on quality, for example, quality education, we use several proxy. I hope this several proxy can be used to measure one global. So that's the total 319 indicators.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that for that explanation. And I'm glad I heard the number correctly, the 319.
Yeah.
Over to Gemma. Gemma, national target setting, how does it relate to the international one? You're muted.
Okay, thanks very much, Stephen. So yeah, to measure progress, you need to be able to understand, as you say, what are you trying to progress towards? Now, globally and regionally, development partners like myself at ESCAP and you at the country team, resident coordinator's office, and Alessandra in DESA, we have to, in a way, use the targets which countries have agreed to, right? And so in the global 169 targets, a large number of them have got a quantifiable number, like, you know, by 2020, reduce poverty by 50% or something. So it's very easy to, as a methodologist, statistician, to quantify what is the target. For some of the SDG targets, there is no quantifiable target. So it just is more of a qualitative statement. And in this case, there is a variety of approaches that we've seen can be undertaken. What ESCAP does is that we basically do a methodology called champion methodology. So we find the 5 top countries in the region that can meet that target, and then we basically take that target of those top 5 countries to say, well, that will be the regional target. And the thinking there is that if at least 5 countries in the region can attain that target, then this is something that other countries should aspire to, because the 2030 agenda is a aspirational, ambitious agenda. So we've set an ambitious target that at least 5 countries have reached. Now, there's other methodologies which can be chosen. Another methodology we've seen chosen, our colleagues in Latin America and in Europe use basically bring in targets from other global agreements. So they look at targets that are in the Sendai disaster framework, for instance, or they look at targets that are in the Paris Agreement, or they look at targets that might be in your own national. So you might have like I noticed in your 2017 voluntary national review, there was quite a lot of policy instruments that were discussed, like a blue ocean economy policy in Malaysia. So a second type of methodology, Stephen and audience, is to take targets from other instruments like the Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework for Disasters, or from national documents and policies. And then a third methodology is to take some sort of arithmetic type average or median or some sort of quantified approach that based on your projections. Now, by doing that, again, my second point now is to highlight again that the UN and regional bodies like my own have to have some very justified, transparent and accountable way for setting targets. However, you as countries, the 2030 agenda, very different to the MDG agenda. The 2030 agenda is nationally driven. So countries can decide what indicators they want to use. And as we heard in the case of Indonesia, they've got over 300 indicators, of which 83 are the same as the global. That's fine, that's great. You've localised the agenda, you've localised the ambitions, and you've chosen what's important to you. Malaysia has done the same. And the indicators are not always driven by data availability, but they're driven by what's the country's priority. And the country can then decide, the country then has a fourth option in terms of target setting. Do they want to use the global target or do they want to use a national target? Now, there's some benefits of both options. If you track the global target, then you can look at how your country compares to the region or the globe or other countries that have also got. So you've got some international comparisons, which for a global agenda, a lot of countries like to do. Like we see this every day with things like GDP, unemployment. Even we're seeing it now with COVID rates. We're comparing Indonesia's COVID with Malaysia's, with Thailand's, with the world. So countries like to compare countries. So by using the global targets, you have an international comparison. But it's also completely fine to set national targets for the 2030 agenda purposes. And again, here you might want to, you've got your local policy priorities. So you might, for instance, if we've just heard the Secretary would like to set a decarbonise, zero carbon by 2030, you might, Malaysia might have set also a target of zero carbon, so you might want to put that as your target. But you might also might want to pick up a regional agreement. For instance, Malaysia and Indonesia are both part of the ASEAN community, and you might want to select an ASEAN target that your politicians have agreed to in particular areas. So I think there's a lot of what I would call degrees of freedom, Stephen, and the degrees of freedom are more in the case of a country like Indonesia and Malaysia have got more options available to them. And development partners like Stephen and I can help, talk through some of the options, what are some of the pros and cons, and help you make, an informed decision that's relevant to the country and that works well for your purposes. I'll stop there, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gemma. This was very useful. I think the articulation of the complementarity of the importance of obviously of the international data set, but if a country feels that they can add value by national targets, by making their own plans more precise and the measurement of progress more precise, then that this is encouraged. So thank you both for kind of answering this, I think, important additional question on target setting. I'm now kind of giving it a second try to open up for questions from the audience. Please don't be shy. These is an important opportunity, and I'd like to hand the floor over to whoever would like to ask a question.
As Stefan, it's Gemma here again. I noticed there's a question from a Miss Zida from the University in Malaya in the meeting chat box.
Okay, somehow I may not have, for some reason, access to this meetings check box. So I just let's be pragmatic here. So if Gemma, if you can see that, if I can ask our colleague from the university to ask that question, or the MC to read it. I have unfortunately no access. The meeting chat says I can't see the meeting chat, unfortunately.
Hello, Ms. Stefan.
Yes, hello.
Hello, Mr. Stefan. Yes, I'm Shahida here.
Hello.
All right. I would like to read the question from Miss Zida Fatima from University of Malaya. Alright, the question will be, hi, Zida here from University of Malaya. Very constructive presentation, thank you. I have a question about the use of non-traditional sources. Do you have any opinion about the viability of using citizen science as a source of data for monitoring the SDGs in the context of Asia? There is currently a movement to do this is in Europe and Northern America. Do you get the question, Mr. Stefan?
I have heard part of the question, but I think probably the resource persons may have heard this. Have you heard it, Gemma and Ali?
Maybe Miss Gemma can respond to this.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so the question is there a role for citizen science data for monitoring the SDGs? And a very simple answer to this is absolutely. I shared with you what I see are three challenges for the 2030 agenda. One is data availability, one is confidence, and one is communication. And citizen science data is just one of many non-traditional data sources that, in my view, is usable for monitoring the SDGs. And the reason I say that is two reasons. The first one is that the role of the National Statistics Office in monitoring the SDGs is to the Statistical Office can work with the deliverers or the producers of citizen science data to make that data source fit for use in official statistics. The statistical community have got tools available to us like quality assurance tools, editing tools, methodologies for turning any sort of data into an official statistic. And it's that official statistic that's used for monitoring the SDGs. And so this is why I'm fairly confident that it's possible. Now, having said that, though, you have to be very brave. A National Statistics Office needs to be very brave to do this. And in the Philippines, my office has currently done a lot of research on what big data sources have been used. And the Philippines Statistics Authority, the National Stats Office of Philippines, has done a comprehensive study of using citizen science data for the SDGs. And when I finish speaking here, I'll ask my staff for a link to that study that I can share with you, Zita. But if I don't get time, I'll share it with the organisers today who can share it with you. But I think that there is very few examples, but we have one from the Philippines. And then I think we just need to have, as a statistical community, have the confidence to use it, apply the tools we have available to us, like quality assurance tools, and assure our politicians and our policymakers that it's fit for use in monitoring the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gemma, and I confirm we have tried in the meantime to kind of solve this this technical problem that I can see the questions, if there is an additional question that I can't see, please. Okay, now suddenly I have been kind of enabled to see questions. There is a question from Noor. And that is, what is the role of local governments in SDG implementation? Maybe Dr. Ali, because you have already said a lot about local governments first, and then afterwards Gemma to complement, please.
Thank you for the question. Actually, in Indonesia, the implementation of SDGs goes to provincial level and district level, which I said before that we have 514 district autonomous region. So the implementation of SDGs in Indonesia is quite challenges in this aspect to achieve the goals when we talk about the local government as much at district level. The role of local governments actually played a vital role in implementing SDGs in Indonesia, because they have to run all programs that proposed by the central government, and also run program that proposed by local governments, especially with respect to SDGs implementation program. And local government should prepare regional action plan, which consists of program and activities to address all targets of SDGs. And I think the local government should also select which one is relevant to their region. So not all SDGs targets or programs are addressed in every local government, because we have various or different priorities between local governments, especially in their development. And that was the role of local government in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you. Gemma?
Yeah, thanks very much, Stephen. So the statistical community has very much worked on the indicator framework and the monitoring and data needs of the 2030 agenda. But if you look at the entire document about the 2030 agenda, there's a big area in there called the follow-up and review framework. Now, the follow-up and review framework includes the high-level political forum, it includes voluntary national reviews, it includes the indicator framework, as I've mentioned. And as part of that voluntary national review part of the framework, it encourages countries to reach out to all actors in your country to engage, so that the voluntary national review comes from the country. It just doesn't come from the government or from the politicians. So that voluntary national, that follow-up and review framework encourages reaching out to the private sector, local governments, citizens directly, NGOs, the government, clearly the government, of which we're all part of. And in a lot of countries, as we've just heard in Indonesia, countries have absolutely done that. And it, you know, I would guess that in most national coordinating committees for the 2030 agenda, there is representation from different levels of government, as well as private sector, NGOs, and the community. This might be a question you might want to ask our colleagues there in Department of Statistics Malaysia, because I do see definitely the framework for the 2030 agenda has spells out a role for local governments, and it's up to the practices at the country level. We'll work through how that is actually done. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Gemma. And indeed, there have been some efforts, of course, to work with the local level in terms of localization of SDGs, both through actually, interestingly, in Malaysia, not only the local government level, but also the parliamentary constituency level, where there's a very interesting project of the so-called all-party parliamentary group, which is a bipartisan group of parliaments, and in their constituencies they work together with NGOs to do local diagnostics of SDGs, and then also solutions to local SDG problems. So this is very much, there is kind of at pilot level various activities going on, but it needs to be further systematized. Now I have in the meantime the questions come in, so that's very encouraging. Another one question is following up on Dr. Ali's earlier message. May I know, Ms. Z is writing, how far is the implementation of SDG localization in Indonesia in terms of data collection specifically? SDG localization in terms of data collection. Ali, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. During my involvement in the SDGs team in Indonesia about the data collection, actually, we are facing actually a big problem when we are trying to provide data collection, especially for district level. And actually, from the SDGs indicators in Indonesia, there are two providers in general. BPS, Statistic Indonesia, obtained from the survey or census activities, while the other indicators of SDGs provided by line ministries or regional government institution, what we call sectoral statistics. So in this case, we have tried to divide the task in the providing data for SDGs. And from the BPS statistic perspective, when we try to provide data for SDGs at the district level, we just got from the very big survey like socio-economic survey or household survey, SUSENAS, and also from the Sakernas or what's it called, labor force survey, while other survey just can provide until province level. So in this case, for BBS, we try to look for another approach, especially in providing data at district level. We use like modeling statistic, small area estimation. That's we got from data, for example, from SUSENAS. That's from number of indicators that cannot be. I mean, when we try to calculate indicators at district level from SUSENAS or socio-economic survey, the relative standard error is very high for some indicators. How to solve this one? We use small area estimation method by using other what we call auxiliary variable from the census or from the village data collection. We try to calculate the indicators of SDGs that that is a responsibility of BPS, and then we can get some like about maybe 30 indicators, and we are trying to provide. Maybe by next year we can provide the indicators needed by the local government at district level. But for the province level, we have already provided more than 100, I think, from the survey conducted by BPS. That's the condition.
Great. Thank you, Ali. We are slowly coming to an end of our allocated time. I just want to highlight that Gemma just posted a study on the use of citizen-generated data for SDG reporting in the Philippines that you can see in the chat session. And I would like to use the last question to ask the two resource person to kind of make their final wrap-up statements, to kind of bake it into these statements. And the question is as follows. It has been highlighted that environmental indicators have always been the most data poor and not sufficiently integrated into the national official SDG statistics. This is in spite of its criticality for the 2030 agenda. Can you share some examples of how the environmental indicators can better be measured and reflected by government in decision making? So I'm asking perhaps you, Gemma, to first kind of provide a wrap-up statement, and then afterwards Dr. Ali, and finally I will say a few words. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Stephen. So back in my days when I worked with the Australian Bureau of Statistics, I was in charge of environment statistics for quite a few years, and at the time, you know, it was quite a while ago now, but environment statistics were definitely not the most prominent at the time, and they're still not the time, but it is changing relative, and we are seeing massive improvements over the years. What we have available to us is the two frameworks that Alessandra Alfieri spoke to in her opening address. The global statistical community has developed a framework called the System of Environmental Economic Accounts. And this system of environmental economic accounts covers many areas: water accounts, land accounts, waste accounts, energy accounts. And countries like Indonesia and Malaysia are very actively producing accounts from the system of environmental economic accounts. The framework is being extended, and in March next year, countries will be asked to endorse a new framework called ecosystem accounts. Now, those ecosystem accounts are in areas like oceans, where again, countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, my own country here in Thailand, Vietnam, the Pacific Islands, we rely so much on the oceans. You know, there's 18,000 islands in Indonesia. They're all surrounded by oceans. We need healthy oceans for our livelihoods. So the frameworks exist, and the tools available to use them exist, and and the data often exists in the form of administrative data or big data. So here we need to bring together, the statisticians bring together their understanding of accounts, their understanding of compiling accounts, with their confidence in the use of big data, including citizen science data, to produce these statistics. The 2030 Agenda Indicator Framework around the environmental indicators, a lot of them are about agreements, you know, agreements to the Paris Agreement, agreement to the Sendai Agreement. So this opportunity to fill environment statistics is very much at the national level. And I think you'll find that a lot of countries are putting in many more environmental indicators into their voluntary national reviews than they are needed in the global indicator framework. So I'm an optimist in the area of statistics, and I'm confident that the tools and the data is available there, and that we will see increasing priority being put on those by governments, because those environmental ones during this year of the nature, as we heard Alessandra say, can do this. So in conclusion, I would really very much like to thank Department of Statistics Malaysia, Dr. Uzia, the entire team for being with you today, and having the opportunity to share some reflections on the 2030 agenda, and to really showcase the contribution Malaysia is making nationally, globally and regionally to the agenda. And it's been a real pleasure to see you all and be with you again. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Gemma. Thank you for these words, and thank you for your great presentations. Over to Ali, please.
Thank you. Actually, Ms. Gemma already explained clearly about the situation in Indonesia, especially with respect to the environmental data. That data for developing a system of economic environment account, actually, we are in BPS Statistics Indonesia really depend on the data collected by or compiled by line ministries or government agencies. So in BPS, we are, I think, this is the weakest area of data availability for the SDGs in terms of goals, for example, 12, 13, 14 in SDGs. And BPS actually didn't provide at all for these indicators in these goals. And all environment indicators provided by line ministries, actually. And of course, for the environment data, we try to, using approach system of economic account, environment economic account, that we try to provide SDGs, and this already done the research on this last couple of years in national account system. Thank you very much. And for the final, for the closing, I think I try to thanks to Department of Statistics Malaysia, and first once again congratulations for the launching of Malaysia Sdg Indicator 2019. And once again, thank you for inviting BPS to be participating in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. By virtue of saying a few final words, I would like to kind of acknowledge that a great session is coming to an end. I think a very rich session, and maybe pull out a few kind of takeaways that I have from this session. First of all, I think it's very clear that since we have only 10 years to achieve the SDGs, urgent work is needed, both in terms of acceleration of the achievement of the SDGs, but also what came out, very urgent work on kind of enhancing the data sets for the SDG indicators. It was kind of presented that COVID-19 has set us back in terms of achievements, but now there's a new opportunity to take into account really in a very balanced way the environmental sustainability and the social inclusion aspects of SDGs. My second message, really kind of that I pulled together from different presentations, is that Malaysia has all the ingredients to build on the good work that has already been going on. This includes the alignment of planning and budgeting to the SDGs. It includes the upcoming voluntary national review, and it was mentioned that this is not only a government or should not only be based on the work of the government, but should reach out also to the contributions of local governments, private sector, and other important actors that contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And it will be continuing through the roadmap, and this is the second iteration of the roadmap, and one good innovation could be to complement the strengthening of international targets with some national targets that can identify certain gaps and accelerate action necessary to move forward with regard to these targets. My third point is that there was a call to rise to the challenges, to the challenge to provide really more data for indicators, that we are halfway there, but we need to accelerate basically to bring up the data sets that are necessary for the comprehensive set of indicators. There was a call to be more confident to use big data and non-traditional data sources, and to use the fantastic communication that is already going on to also communicate these new sets of data. There was also a call to perhaps strengthen the localization, not only of action, but the localization of data collection. And we have heard a number of good examples from Indonesia. And finally, I heard a very strong call to not forget the environmental indicators, which are usually the least developed ones and which need to be urgently looked at. Now, my final point is, of course, as the having the honor to being the resident coordinator for Malaysia to express our readiness to support this endeavor. We are, as you all know, collaborating with different actors already on different aspects of the SDGs, but we express our readiness to strengthen our cooperation also with the Department of Statistics of Malaysia in some of the issues that were pointed out. I think the beauty of the UN today is that we have just gone through UN reform, which means that we are much more consolidated. As we, of course, we have different parts of the organization, but they all collaborate to provide the best service for our clients and our collaborators, I mean the government and others. And that also, I think, will include regional organizations such as ESCAP and the whole UN country team. We have been in discussions with Dr. Uzio's team to bring together to develop, I think, the data set for 33 indicators with technical assistance from different agencies that kind of are the guardians of the different indicators, and we are ready to kind of move this forward very, very swiftly. Just also for me to use the opportunity to say that we are in the last stages of approval of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, our collaboration framework for the next 5 years, and we look forward for the government to approve this quickly, which will even allow us a more robust kind of set of interactions. With all of this, I would like to thank you all for this great workshop. Want to congratulate you for this for the new report, and again how it was communicated in a very, very substantive workshop today, including this last session. I would like to thank our distinguished resource persons, Gemma Van Halderen from ESCAP and Dr. Ali Said from the Indonesian Statistical Office. And last but not least, of course, I would like to thank all of the participants for the interesting interaction, for the interesting questions, and for the opportunity to interact with all of you. Thank you very much, and we look forward to collaborating. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stefan, Ms. Gemma, and also Dr. Ali for a very insightful discussion today. Muchas gracias. Khop khun ka. Before we conclude this session, I would like to invite our very honorable Chief Statisticians of Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia, Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin, to give away his conclusion speech. Datuk Sri Dr. Uzair, please.
Thank you, Sida. Mr. Stephen, Ms. Gemma, Dr. Ali, and also Ms. Alessandra. Maybe not listen to us right now, but I think she can listen to our recording in our FB Live. Again, I really appreciate all of you for your contribution to our session today. And in fact, we got very overwhelming participation. So on record, this morning we have close to 400 participants, and for this afternoon session we have about 365 participants. It's very overwhelming, and also a lot of them also follow through our social media, through the Facebook. It's very rich input discussion, and I think the SDGs is a journey, and it's about how we can really work together. I mean, what is it of the 5 principles: the planet, the people, and the partnership, and all the other 2P, and of course we can really look in these words a lot of progress since the MDG time, and also now we are on the SDG. So we have about 10 years left for 2030 agenda, and it's very important for every country to have very close monitoring process. The indicator, the responsibility of the National Statistical Office, it become very important. So this is really far-reaching consequence if we don't have the very good indicator measurement on the progress. They will impact the people because this involve the allocation of money, the annual budget and support. So we hope we can work together as a country. Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. You've done a lot in assisting us as the UN resident coordinator for this region, especially for Malaysia. And of course, Ms. Gemma, we from time to time we have very close discussion, and our neighbor country, Mr. Ali, and all the other ASEAN region. In fact, we just concluded today our head of the ASEAN annual meeting, and a lot of the input from the meeting, especially how we can really leverage on the big data and also on the technology. And of course, for Malaysia this year, I think Indonesia also facing the similar about our census 2020 is a really challenging time. Actually, it is the opportunity for us how to move on the data integration on the using tapping the data immunization record. It's a lot of lesson learned. For very first time, Mr. Stephen, the census will continue across 2 years. We started on the 7th of July. Now we continue on the online accounting through the online until the 21st December. And if the time, if the scenario is permitted, we will continue face to face next year on from 20 January until 6 February. Again, thank you very much to all the panelists, all the participants, and we do hope that with this SDG, and another one I think also I really appreciate on the highlight by the panel on the importance of the communication. So we want the statistics being used and be to be really understood by the as many as possible, including the youth and also people at the rural area. So we need to make it in the layman term. So I think this is something that we also can learn from Indonesia, how from this discussion, the involvement a lot of the local and also regional level, plan of action of ATG. This is something that we still a lot have to be done in this country. Again, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before I conclude this session again, I would like to take a picture of you, Mrs. Stefan, Ms. Gemma, Dr. Ali, and also Dr. Sri Dr. Rose. Please share with us your brightest smile. Are you guys ready? All right, I will count 1, 2, and 3. Right, another one. Okay, just wait for a while. Okay, we'll take one more picture with all participants, yeah? Okay, everyone there is ready? Okay, 1, 2, and smile. Another one. Okay, another one. All right. With all of us. It's going to be a big white screen with all of the participants there. Right? Just wait for a while. Okay, ready? All of you, with the count of 3. 3, 2, 1. Give us a big smile. So much for that. Thank you so much for each and every one of you. As the saying goes, to every beginning there is an ending, and now today's webinar session has come to its end after a long day of intensive and fruitful discussion. Marcel Proust famously said, "It's not a matter of changing our landscape, but of changing our eyes." Thank you for changing the way we see. It has been a great day, a wonderful session with all of you. On behalf of the Department of Statistics Malaysia, we would like to extend our deepest appreciation and gratitude to each and every one of you, especially for your time, for your attention, and your participants, your active participation. Till the end of today, 4:45 p.m., we do have another 148 invitees, I would say, and participants still here. Keep up the momentum. Big round of applause to all of us. We hope you achieve what you come here to achieve. God bless and good day to each and every one of you. Thank you. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.